So they have a presentation, Commissioners. You've asked for this for some time about the various activities with the trail. So there's a lot to this presentation. It was included in your packet. So I'll turn it over to Whit and let him begin, but Paul's got a piece of this, and then we can have kind of an open discussion about all the issues with trails. With that, I'll kick it over to Whit and let him start.
All right, thank you, Barry. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Whit Blanton with Ford Pinellas. Happy to be here today to give you an update on the Pinellas Trail and welcome your thoughts and suggestions on the trail's future. Paul Kazi of Parks and Conservation Services and I have developed this presentation, and we'll tag team it a little bit. I'll cover the first half, and then I'll turn it over to Paul to cover more of the operational elements of the trail. And I need to apologize. I have got a rough cold this week, and so my voice even sounds weird to me, but hopefully I'll get through it okay. Also want to introduce Kyle Simpson of our staff sitting behind you. Kyle is our active transportation planner and focuses on all things bicycle pedestrian throughout the county. So the Pinellas Trail has been around for over 35 years now. It is a facility that our residents and visitors alike recognize as a huge amenity to Pinellas County. For purposes of today's discussion, when we talk about the Pinellas Trail, it's primarily the Fred Marquis Pinellas Trail and the Duke Energy Trail and the Coast to Coast Connector. They all comprise what we think of as the core Pinellas Trail loop. The Coast to Coast Trail goes from St. Petersburg all the way over to Titusville on the east coast of Florida. There are still some gaps in that trail, but the Pinellas Trail is a significant component of that. While we think of the trail as a recreational amenity, it is also a transportation corridor. It is a stormwater conveyance, a linear park, a greenway corridor, and we have a lot of residents who have chosen over time to be located near the trail. In fact, 20 years ago or so, I did a study of property values near the trail, and within about a quarter mile of the trail or half mile of the trail, property values rose appreciably compared to the rest of the county. And I think that usage has probably continued since then. There are 67 miles of trail constructed and operational, and an additional 7 miles to be completed in the near future to create what we refer to as the Pinellas Trail Loop. There's a lot of responsibilities associated with the trail. It is a partnership for sure between Pinellas County Public Works, Parks and Conservation Resources, and Ford Pinellas, in addition to our municipal partners. This graphic just illustrates that partnership and shows the areas of responsibility that each of the organizations has. I won't go into great detail, but we do have the volunteers for the trail that come under Parks and Conservation Resources Management. We have the Ranger Patrol. Coordination with law enforcement is all part of that as well. Our agency provides primarily the planning support. We staff the Trail Security Task Force, and we also collect what we consider trip data or attendance and visitation data on the trail. The usage on the trail has remained consistent since it spiked after 2020 with the pandemic. A lot of folks went out and bought bicycles and got some fresh air, and they've continued to use the trail in that same record number of users. I'll show a graphic in a minute, but it's over 2 million trips per year. There's broad community support for trails countywide. Every survey we do shows that there's a lot of support for separated bicycle and pedestrian facilities, especially additional trails. We have recently updated the crossings at key intersections to improve safety and coordination. And then we have a number of trail projects that will be constructed over the next 5 years that are both local in scale and regional in scale. And we'll cover what's in the work program. So just a highlight of the network of trails in the county, and we distinguish these from on-street bicycle facilities such as bike lanes and wide sidewalks and such. These are separated multi-use paths or shared use paths. The trail loop, that 67 miles, soon to be almost 75 miles, will be the backbone of the Pinellas Trail system. And there are connections on the Courtney Campbell Causeway and the Gandy Corridor, and then soon the Howard Franklin Bridge when it's completed to Hillsborough County, and then we have connections deep into Pasco County through the Starkey Gap and on through the Anclote Trail network as well. There are community trails and bicycle networks that provide connections to the regional trail network. Some east-west trails are existing, the Ream-Wilson Trail through Clearwater, for instance, and we're also working on some additional trails, such as the Joe's Creek Greenway Trail that will happen at some point in the future. Ford Pinellas began a trail counter program with 8 locations in 2017. What gets measured gets done, so we count vehicle trips. We also thought we should begin counting trail users as well. This captures the number of users, the time of day, and the day of the week, and it also collects speed data. It does not distinguish between types of bicycle facility or users. And we do this in close collaboration with DOT. We share our trail data with the Florida Department of Transportation, and they also have trail counters on the Courtney Campbell Causeway and on the Duke Energy Trail in North Pinellas County. This is the graphic I referred to earlier, and you can see the spike in the number of trips on the trail from about 1.5 million or thereabouts to about 2.1 million, and that's remained steady since then. I like to think that folks who went out and bought bikes continue to use them. The trend so far in 2024 has been consistent with that increase. And we break down our trail data. This is from October. We had a couple of trail counters that were out this month, so you'll see some gaps in the data. There's ongoing maintenance issues. Sometimes with those trail counters, they get knocked over by mowers. Who knows what else happens, weather events sometimes. But we maintain those, and we break down the trail usage by location, by time of day, the mode split, whether people are walking or jogging or whether they're bicycling. And in particular, you don't see the data in Dunedin, but that's probably the one where we have the greatest split, 50-50 between people who walk and people who ride their bikes. Some of them are a little more heavily skewed one way or the other. We produce this report monthly in the agenda packet for the Ford Pinellas board. We are pioneering some new trail counter techniques, piloting artificial intelligence cameras for technology for both trail and on-road counts. This is an example of a pilot that we did at the Dunedin Causeway in Alt 19, where we collected near-miss information from traffic vehicles and pedestrians and bicyclists in this heavily used location. We will be expanding this AI camera technology in the near future with a partnership with the county and the Florida Department of Transportation. And this fits into the county's intelligent transportation system, automated traffic monitoring system as well, to record data and use that for predictive analytics of how people may operate on the roadway system. Some of the recent enhancements on the trail is we've been working to help people understand that parts of the trail need to operate differently, and where the trail is particularly congested at certain times of the year, certain times of the day. In Dunedin in particular, we've introduced some new signs working with Pinellas County and the city of Dunedin to let people know that they need to slow down in the more congested areas, just like you do with your roadway network. And this is in the Main Street area of downtown Dunedin. In addition, there are some potential future enhancements that we've been in conversation with the city of Dunedin and Pinellas County about, and potentially we may award some funding to modify the design of the trail in these areas, because signage and feedback signs and pavement markings help, but actual physical changes, design changes, can be a more permanent change when you want to reinforce behavior. This is an image from the Indianapolis Cultural Trail, and we could do something like this in the short segment maintained by the city of Dunedin, for instance, and they've expressed some interest in that. We've also talked to the city and the county about potential capacity improvements in this more congested area of downtown Dunedin. They have right-of-way, they have some room to make that happen, and they seem to have some interest. It's not an actual project yet, it's just a conversation at this point. Really happy to announce that we have a trail wayfinding project that's been in the works for a very long time, a lot of conversation over the years. We prioritized this project and received $200,000 in federal funds from the Department of Transportation to develop the wayfinding signs, and then in a partnership with the county, 45 signs will be installed at 15 intersections along the trail from North County all the way down to downtown St. Petersburg in the coming year. This will help users understand where there might be restrooms, where there might be park facilities, and other destinations, and the distance to those destinations. In 2023, we conducted one of our periodic trail user surveys. We do these about every 4 to 5 years or so, and have done so for almost 30 years. People were usually intercepted as they rode or walked by. This time we had a digital option, so we allowed people to respond at their leisure, and we received some almost 2,500 responses. Some of the trends that I'd like to highlight is that the distance that people are traveling to the trail and the number of people driving to the trail have decreased over time. Again, I'm not sure what that means. We can read into that, but it seems that there are more people who are able to get to the trail safely without having to use a car. Most respondents would use more trails countywide if they were available. Anecdotally, we encounter a lot of people who have moved to a specific location because of the number of trails or the confluence of trails in that area. And the thing they really appreciate is that it's separate from motor vehicles, and generally they feel comfortable and safe using the trail. We were also pleased to introduce our first coordinated education and enforcement day with law enforcement. It was under the Pinellas Trail Security Task Force. This was a single-day event from 9 to 12 back in April, where we coordinated with 5 different law enforcement agencies to engage people on the trail and reinforce safe behavior, courtesy in particular. There were over 230 engagements, and engagements is a nice way of saying that people were able to provide a little bit of education and information. There was actually one arrest made. It was not related to anything they did on the trail. I think it was an outstanding warrant. And then I believe there was 1 or 2 tickets issued, but mainly these were just positive reinforcements to people about speed, about behavior, about riding and walking in a certain way, and just respecting other users on the trail. I'm sure you've all heard that there have been complaints about speeding and user behavior on the trail, and it's nice to have an event where we're coordinated and reinforcing that. We presented this information to our board. There was a lot of support for this event and encouragement to do this regularly, more than just once a year perhaps, and the law enforcement agencies were very receptive to doing this regularly. There is a lot of state support for trails. I think it was important to note that the Florida legislature established several years ago the Sun Trail program, which is the shared use network statewide. And it was in 2015, and initially it started with $25 million in annual funding to develop a trail network. The Florida Greenways and Trails Foundation is charged with developing a recommended set of priorities statewide that is then recommended to the state agencies for funding. We are an active participant in the Florida Greenways and Trails Network, and Pinellas County has benefited from the Sun Trail program significantly. We are consistently ranked in the top 5 of candidate trail projects for funding. In 2018, Dunedin was recognized as Florida's first trail town. It's a designation as a place to enjoy the amenities and unique heritage of a community benefiting economic and social activity using trail networks. I think there are several trail towns now, but Dunedin was the first one. And in 2023, significantly, thanks to Senator Pasadomo and others in the legislature, the state increased the annual funding to $50 million, doubled it, and included a one-time infusion of $200 million. And this was paired with the Florida Wildlife Corridor Program. So trail networks and the Wildlife Corridor Program are part and parcel to connect these networks throughout the state. This is just a large image of most of the Central Florida Sun Trail Network, and I'll zoom in the next slide and show you the regional trails in Pinellas County. In orange is the Coast to Coast Connector Trail that goes over to Titusville from St. Petersburg, and in green is the Gulf Coast Trail that goes all the way down to Naples in southwest Florida. Again, most of the coast-to-coast trail is complete. There are a few segments in Sumter County, I believe, that need to be finished. And then the Gulf Coast Trail is less complete, but it does have some segments that are in existence down through Sarasota County and into Fort Myers. I wanted to highlight the economic impacts of trails, and I don't have my notes handy on this. I do have an update of this slide. We just received the report. Well, the report's not ready yet. We just received the presentation on this. The Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council has been looking at the economic impact of trail networks around the state, and the Pinellas Trail was one of 5 that they chose to highlight. And the data that I've seen shows that there's generally a 1 to 9 return on investment, meaning for every dollar invested, there's $9 in economic return due to people, like I said earlier, about buying homes near the trail, opening businesses near the trail, or people who are using the trail spending their money on the trail. And a lot of our trail users don't just get out there for recreation to go up and back. A lot of them go and spend money at restaurants or breweries or things like that as well. And I'll be glad to share this report as soon as we get it with you all, if you'd like to delve into the background and the data behind it. I have personally not been able to dive deeply into this just yet. There are some upcoming trail projects that are in the 5-year Transportation Improvement Program that Ford Pinellas adopts every year in partnership with the Florida Department of Transportation's 5-year work program. The Howard Franklin Bridge, the bridge project is moving along at a swift pace and will be open within the year. The bridge trail will open in early 2026, and that includes connections on 4th Street from Gandy Boulevard to I-275. That construction will begin next year. And then Ulmerton Road from Fountain Parkway in the Carolina area to I-275, and that construction also will start in the coming year. The Courtney Campbell Causeway overpass at the Bayshore Trail and State Road 60 or Courtney Campbell Causeway, that will open in construction in 2025. That was a priority with the city of Clearwater, and that's a project that will make for a safer crossing at Gulf to Bay and also reduce motorist delay. Every time a pedestrian or bicyclist presses the button to cross, it introduces a significant amount of delay to allow for that crossing. They'll be able to just take the bridge and eliminate that delay at the intersection. The Pinellas Trail Loop components include 126th Avenue to Ulmerton Road to Haynes Bayshore, and San Martin Boulevard to Macoma Drive. These are estimated dates for construction for those projects as well. And then, without going into too much detail, Ford Pinellas has adopted an active transportation plan in this past year as part of its long-range transportation plan. And what we try to do as a county-wide agency is we focus on high-level county-wide priorities, and we let the local governments worry about the smaller connections that they would like to see in each of their communities. We may be a funding partner for those smaller projects, but what we really try to do is look at where are the next key priorities for connections to the trail. And the at least one that we have prioritized is the Sunset Boulevard corridor that would go east-west between Dunedin and Safety Harbor, essentially. And we're working on identifying an alignment for where that would happen. And then I mentioned the Joe's Creek Greenway to the south, just south of the Lellman area. That'll tie in the Pinellas Trail around 71st Street with the eastern part of the county as well. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Paul Kazi, and we'll share the operational aspects of the trail.
Good morning, Commissioners. Paul Kazi, Parks and Conservation Resources Director. And so I'm going to get into really the user experience over these next several slides. With over 2 million visitors a year on the trail, minor conflicts are to be expected. They seem to center around 3 main points, one being interactions with e-bikes between e-bike users and traditional bicyclists, pedal bikers, and pedestrians. Seems to be a lack of courtesy among trail users and disagreement over what has become known as the keep right except to pass rule. In addition, there are several questions regarding the future of Elfers Spur. So starting with e-bikes, Florida Statute 316.20655 provides all the rights and privileges of e-bike users, the same as bicycles. However, it does allow governments to establish their own rules for trails that are under their jurisdiction. E-bike classifications, generally three types. There's the type 1, which is a pedal assist with a top speed of 20 miles per hour. There's the top 2, which has a throttle assist that also is regulated to 20 miles per hour. And then there is the type 3, which are similar to type 2 e-bikes, that they have a throttle, but they are able to attain a top speed of 28 miles an hour, which is above the trail speed limit of 20 miles per hour. By law, all e-bikes manufactured after January of 2021 are required to carry a badge on them that explains what type of e-bike it is, type 1, 2, or 3, what size motor, and so forth. In the 2023 Pinellas Trail survey, it was indicated that 13% of respondents identified an e-bike as their typical mode of traffic on the trail. So let's talk about e-bikes. Sales of e-bikes nationwide have increased from 1% of sales in 2019 to over 5% of sales in 2023, or well over 1 million units per year. In some European countries, where bikes are much more prevalent, the sales of e-bikes have actually passed the sale of traditional bikes in those areas. And I think we can see that as e-bikes become more affordable, trails become more accessible, and populations age, e-bikes will become even more prevalent on our trails and roadways. And also say that unlike Segways and some of the other electric assist devices that have seemed to come and go, e-bikes are definitely here to stay. And it is an issue we're going to have to continue to monitor. So when we talk about the Keep Right, one of the things I wanted to bring up was the intersection redesign that has been going on over the last couple of years. And this was versus what we used to call the separate lane from walkers and cyclists. That practice was abandoned many years ago for several reasons, including cost, conformity with other trails in the region, and trail best practices. So to further instill the Keep Right rule, Public Works Transportation Division has upgraded intersection crossings on the trail with the 3-bollard design, which you see in the picture. Previously, we had a 4-bollard design, so it kind of separated those 2 lanes you see right there into 4 lanes. That caused confusion among the user types on the trail, and also, unfortunately, for those who weren't paying attention, was a cause of some safety concerns. People would come up on the bollards and weren't paying attention and would hook either a handlebar or a pedal on the bollard, and they'd end up on the ground. So far, 179 of the 199 trail crossings have been completed, and we expect the entirety to be completed by March of 2025. Another effort underway to better inform and educate trail users is the Trail Courtesy Sign Program. These trail courtesy signs, example shown here, include 8 messages to reinforce positive trail user behavior, including keep right, pass left, stand still or stand aside, keep your pets close, and don't trash your trail. The Parks and Conservation Resources Department piloted these signs on our regional park trails over the past year, and the Friends of Pinellas Trail has purchased 35 additional signs to be placed on the Pinellas Trail, and we expect that to occur early next year. We also maintain a courtesy guide on the county's website further explaining the 8 courtesy messages. Final issue, Elfer Spur. For those who aren't familiar, the Elfer Spur portion of the Pinellas Trail opened approximately 20 years ago. The spur, which is shown here on the map in orange, provides a connection from the Pinellas Trail in Tarpon Springs to the City of Tarpon Springs North Anclote River Nature Park, and further north to the Upper Anclote Trail. The trail was originally constructed by Pinellas County, however, that is on land owned by the City of Tarpon Springs. In the last 10 years, we've had to close the Alfer Spur twice due to erosion issues, and as has remained closed since it was last closed in 2022. So in 2017, when the previous repair was done, we collaborated with the City of Tarpon Springs, spent about $170,000 to install vinyl sheet piling to reinforce the bank. As you see in this picture, this is what the trail looks like now in this area where we have the most severe erosion. There are several other spots along that section of the trail that also have erosion issues that it's basically being caused by the current of the river. The river along the Alfer Spur in that particular area wants to go straight. So even though we've tried to deflect it with bank reinforcement, it keeps getting undermined, and that's causing further erosion on the trail. Now, the City of Tarpon Springs is requesting the county take responsibility for the additional repairs, which is likely to far exceed the $170,000 that was previously spent to repair the trail. As I said, originally we just put in some vinyl sheet piling to reinforce the bank. The river undermined that sheet piling, causing it to collapse. So we would have to go a much greater depth in the river with probably steel sheet piling to reinforce that area. And that's no guarantee that it would prevent the problem from just moving elsewhere on Alfer Spur. From a staff point of view, we feel it's far more sustainable and resilient to pursue an alternative route and abandon Alfer Spur permanently.
And Joe, just so you know, Joe and I have met with the outgoing city manager and the new city manager regarding this issue. So.
Any questions, Commissioner Latville?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both for your presentation. I have a question about repairs on the trail. My understanding is if there's like an issue or a divot or something, that it gets painted, like sometimes orange, sometimes like another color for the crews to be able to identify them and come repair them. So it's more of a two-part question. One, how long does it normally take when there's a problem that gets identified for it to be repaired? And then the second part is, if people are riding their bikes, and it may shock you to know that I'm not one of those people, but if people are riding their bikes, you know, at a decent speed, they may have trouble seeing it. Is there something else that could be done to identify some of those issues that need to be repaired?
Well, I can tell you that, you know, our risk management department does inspections of the trail. They do a lot of the painting when they see whether it's root intrusion or things like that. And then we submit a work request to have it repaired. I couldn't tell you exactly how long it takes. It really depends on what type of repair it is. There are some times when, you know, if it's something where it's not level, we can go out and we can, with our park rangers, grind an area down. If it's an area where we've got root intrusion, generally Public Works will come out and cut the root and then repave a section. So it really depends on what it is and how serious or how large of a problem it is.
Have you given consideration to doing something other than painting to make it easier to see for folks, like especially on bicycles?
Yeah, if there's some best practices, certainly we would want to pursue those. But I think if there's a significant issue, like a hole that's created there, then you'll see an orange cone that's there, and that is a lot more visible than just paint. So I've seen both. I think the paint is used generally for more minor issues, and is it's a major issue, then it's actually coned off.
Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've got a few questions, just maybe some updates, if you will. So there are some areas that I've noticed. Again, some years ago, we tried to get all of the school bus areas similar so that when you traveled through a bus zone, when it slowed the traffic down, that it was 15 in all places, and it was the same approach. And so what I started to see a little bit, and maybe I've just noticed it, it's been there for a while, is some areas aren't four-way stops. There's some areas that say the trail crossing does not stop. And so, and not that they stop anyway, right? Bikers, especially, you bikers, don't stop at the crosswalk, at the cross lines. But I was just wondering, is there any thought to standardizing those intersections so that, since they don't stop anyway, that we don't make them stop, and everybody on the driver's side is on alert for that?
Right. Music to my ears. I've long observed since I've been here that there is inconsistency, and I would like to have the trail thought of more as kind of like our superhighway for trails, and more like an interstate of trails almost, to where the cross-street traffic, if there's already a stop there, I'm not sure why we're also stopping the trail user, especially if they're not stopping, as you noticed, very few of them. I'll tell a little story. When I first moved here, I lived on the Dunedin Causeway 10 years ago. And I commuted on the trail, come into work downtown. And I stopped at every one of the stop signs, and a bicyclist came up behind me and said, "You don't need to stop. Nobody stops." And I felt like a fool for stopping. So there's a culture that's out there, and it's probably not the same culture in other communities, but it's the culture we have. And so I think at high speed, high volume intersections like Main Street, in Dunedin, absolutely we need to stop. But there are other minor east-west roadways where the traffic volume is light, the speeds are low. We already have a stop sign for the cars. We should be looking at consistency. In 2013, Ford Pinellas did a study, about a year before I got here, a little bit more, that looked at consistency across the trail. And a number of the municipalities did not want to change the configuration of the trail, notably Clearwater and Dunedin, I believe. So I think we can continue to revisit that issue, and Ford Pinellas would be prepared to begin those conversations. I know I have some support from county staff on moving forward with that as well.
Okay. And I'd be remiss if, when we have these conversations, if I just didn't go on the record to express my total opposition to the change. And you said it's been decades or years ago, and I'm like, oh my gosh, has it been that long that I've been complaining about this to the right stuff with e-bikes now and all of these different speeds? To me, it just makes total sense that they be on one side of the trail and the walkers be on the other side of the trail. I'm a little bit stubborn when I get out there, and I stick to the left. I see the walkers coming at me on the left, or they're coming northbound, and I'm on the southbound, so I go right over there with them. I don't like the idea of e-bikes coming up behind me, and then they're seeing a walker, and some of them get a little close, and they swerve around. Bikers swerve around. To me, it's a major problem, and it's going to continue to be a major problem. So just for the record, and switching into management areas, I know in Dunedin, they were talking about switching back in the managed areas that they control, because it's just so congested there. So my question on that front is, do we have other managed areas other than that area in Dunedin that the city kind of takes control of? Is there other managed areas?
I can speak to that. The city of St. Petersburg, east of 34th Street, I believe, is maintained by the city of St. Pete, and that's through an interlocal agreement with the county. Is there another one? I think that's it. That's it. Yeah, I think it's just Dunedin and the city of St. Petersburg. And both of those locations, maybe not for the entire extent, but for portions, have installed lighting to keep the trail open in the evenings as well. So that is also a deviation from the rest of the trail.
Page 8, you have all of these trail counters. I don't see any on the east side at all, so I'm assuming that that they'll be put in there as well, because I'm really curious about that area through Countryside. It doesn't seem to be used much, but it'd be nice to have some numbers there. I've stopped complaining about the overpass of 580 because I don't see the use. And maybe it's because there's no overpass that we don't have the use. I don't know.
That's the section I ride most frequently. You're absolutely right. It's not as heavily used. Doesn't have the same characteristics, but I do think usage will grow over time as we see those connections. During Christmas shopping season, it's the easiest way to get to the Countryside Mall and not have to fight for a parking space. So I've done my shopping that way. But you're right. We are in the process of, we've just selected a new vendor, right? So we've selected a new vendor to do the trail count program, and we're going to expand that trail count program. We're also going to use some portable counters that can be repositioned to do our counts around the county at spot locations. So we may not have permanent counters everywhere, but we are looking to expand both the permanent counters and then do the spot count locations.
And then an update on the East Lake Canal crossing. How's that coming? The bridge?
The bridge is scheduled to open in spring 2025.
Still on schedule for that?
Still on schedule.
Okay. Then the last thing, the Elfer Spur thing is a big deal. And I think maybe we ought to have a community conversation with folks in Tarpon Springs as well to see a preferred, that's such a beautiful ride there that people love it. They've kind of fallen in love with that area. So it's going to be a hard one to pull away from, but I think a community conversation, so we're listening a little bit, would be helpful. And the last thing, I would just dovetail a little bit on what Commissioner Latvala was talking about. There are some areas of the trail that really need another coating of asphalt. It has gotten bad. Do we have temporary signs up that warn, like, say, rollerbladers? Although I don't see as many rollerbladers today as I used to. There are some areas that are really dangerous. An area just south of Dunedin, I don't know if they've repaved it. I haven't been there in a while. But signs that say, caution, road. I just think we need to be more careful about that messaging in areas that need repair.
We can work with our Public Works Department. I know you see signs that say rough pavement and
Yeah.
things like that on roadways.
And Commissioner, we'll also work with our risk management about the way in which we identify, trip hazards and things like that, to your point. I mean, it's, from a liability standpoint, we're probably okay, but I'm more worried, obviously, and you are, about the resident that experiences it. And so, maybe there's a way that they can better identify some of those. We only have so many resources on the trail, and there's a lot of miles of trail. And so, we have a legal responsibility for a timeline to respond, but trying to match, kind of like we did with sidewalks and stuff. We've increased that. You've increased that over the last several years on the people we have on the trail. But it's a lot of miles of trail, and so we can take a look at how we mark, just deficiencies and things like that.
Whit, thank you. Paul, thank you. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Paul and Whit, thank you very much. As a regular trail user myself, this is something that's near and dear to me. So
He's the guy that goes down to the Naples Trail,
on the trail counters, I know at one point they were dropping like flies because they were just old and worn out at the end of their life. Have we gone through and replaced those that have reached the end of their life?
We have done repairs out there, so we bring them back online as quickly as we can. We've had some responsiveness issues with the current contractor, and that's why we're changing. So we feel good about that. Kyle's been managing that program. He could probably speak in more detail if you want to get into that, but I would say give us a couple of months to get the new contractor on board, and I'm expecting we'll have a better consistency and responsiveness on that issue.
Right. Okay, thanks. So the trail enforcement that we did back in April last year, I thought was great. But as Paul alluded to there in the one slide, e-bikes are here to stay. They're only going to get probably more popular as time goes on. I would love to see us do that as like a quarterly event rather than an annual event. If we could get the law enforcement agencies to agree to do that. Do we have a 2025 date on the calendar at this point?
I don't think we do at this point, but we did it in April last year. We'd kind of like to do it again when it's peak season, so maybe a March, April timeframe. We'll get working on that at the beginning of the year and see what we can arrange. And then maybe we'll do it twice in 2025, and then we'll work toward more of a regular schedule. Law enforcement's been very supportive of this. They are part of our Pinellas Trail Security Task Force, and they're regular contributors to that. So that's usually where the discussions take place, and we'll put that on the agenda for early 2025.
Great, appreciate that very much. On the Elfer Spur, in that one picture there, it shows the trail eroding, but then there's a fence or a retaining wall or something probably for on the backside of a community. If that trail wasn't repaired and just continued to erode away, would that eventually go into that, where that wall is?
So, and I'll let Jill speak to this, but they have a bigger issue regardless of the trail. We simply put pavement on City of Tarpon Springs land.
Right.
And so that area is going to continue to erode, and they have infrastructure under that. Okay. So, so the question about
Well,
responsibility.
no wonder they want us to fix it.
Well, hence our position. But so they've got a bigger issue there that they're going to have to address. It buys them time because it's not an immediate issue. That's the reason they were looking at alternative design for our piece, because they may choose to, relocate their utilities and abandon that area altogether. We don't know, and they don't know at this point.
Right, okay. And then lastly.
Commissioner, if I could just address that real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is a kind of a planning issue as well, because the Elfer Spur has been there. We're missing a huge opportunity to connect those trails on the north side of the river. And that's a deep trail network that goes all into Pasco County as well. So there's a population there that would probably love to come and spend money in Tarpon Springs, and we'd love to facilitate that. So what we're prepared to do whenever anybody wants us to get involved is to look at sort of an alignment feasibility issue. And the bridge, the Alt-19 bridge over the river is, I believe, structurally deficient, if not structurally obsolete. And that's an opportunity where we could get some state funding to widen that bridge and put a proper bike facility across that bridge.
Okay.
There is nothing today, but you only really need to go about maybe a quarter of a mile north of that bridge to tie into the network of trails over there to the west of Alt-19. So it's really a bridge issue, in my opinion, and that might, in the long range, be a much cheaper fix than trying to continue to throw money at the Elfer Spur.
Yeah. Oh, it is programmed. Do we know when, Joe? Okay. Is that a
DOT
county-owned bridge?
five-year
or
work
is-
program, but I will check and make sure. I will verify. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's an excellent point, though, because that would probably solve that issue. Yeah, okay. And then my last comment is 2025 is the 35th anniversary of the Pinellas Trail. So do we have any thoughts, any plans about what we might do to celebrate that milestone?
We are holding regular meetings with the Friends of the Pinellas Trail, trying to get a lock on how we want to proceed, but, we will have events. Originally had an event planned for December 6, 2025, which is the date. And we're just trying to see what type of collaboration or contributions that might be out there from the other cities that are involved in the trail, as well as our Friends group.
Got it, okay. Sounds good, thank you.
No. Commissioner Eggers.
You just love doing that, don't you? Before Commissioner Valla left the state, did he plant any seeds up there to start discussing golf carts on trails? The other day, it's not been long ago, that I saw a four-wheel bicycle on the trail that was as big as a golf cart. And, people in the front, the back, multiple. So it was taking up the same space as a golf cart, but not nearly as fast. Maybe a different set of bike riders would make it faster. Is there any conversation in legislation at all, or is that just something that we're not really having to deal with? And really, Commissioner Latvala didn't do that. I was just giving him a hard time. Anything on that?
No, I mean, I understand that we get calls about golf carts using, especially up in Palm Harbor area, on the trail, We've tried to address that through enforcement, education, but the issue we run into with a lot of these are deal with ADA issues and things like that.
Well, I don't want it. I'm not saying I want it.
Oh, no,
I'm wondering, the e-bikes came down, for instance, all the Segways came down. So motorized vehicles on the trail is way past. I mean, we're there. And I started seeing this other bike out, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that, is that happening? So there's no conversation that you're aware of up in Tallahassee that we need to be like on guard for.
One of the biggest issues that we're really looking at now, if people may be familiar with these bikes, they're called Surons. They look like dirt bikes, but they're electric bicycles, and they seem to be a real thing with the teenagers, and they will go at least 28 miles an hour plus. So trying to see how we can address that.
That's a problem. And I guess the last thing I'd ask, how is the activity on the trail? We've had some folks, some younger folks that have been harassing some walkers and bikers on the trail. Is that kind of quieted down for the most part?
Just through following social media, the Friends of the Pinellas Trail page on Facebook, I know that it seems to be something that is most prevalent in Dunedin with a certain group that's been identified, and I know they're working with law enforcement to address that.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to agenda briefing.
Okay, all right. So on the agenda, you've got your various reports down through item 10. Item number 11 is declaring surplus sale of equipment, the breakdowns within your packet. Item 12, same thing, but this is with different types of items where we put these out through various agencies to see if they need before we send it to auction. Item 14, the next several items is a request for funding. So it's a grant agreement for expenditures that we've incurred related to the storm. This is, the first one's for Hurricane Debbie. Item 15 is for Hurricane Helene, and item 16 is Hurricane Milton. Item 17 is a award of a bid to Rycon Construction. This is for utilities, general maintenance building, and public education center, and then a dewatering building at South Cross, $4.5 million, paid for with Resilient Florida grant funds. Item 18, ranking of firms with GCU. This is for our Find and Fix Gravity Sewer Rehabilitation Program. This is for the professional design build services for this. It's part of a larger $28 million project to find and fix and tighten up our system so we don't have I&I within our gravity sewers. Item 19 is a countywide map. It's our annual update. Onto the regular agenda. Item 20 is a resolution superseding and replacing the Noise Abatement Task Force for St. Pete Airport. Item 21 is an MSTU down at Tierra Verde for tennis and pickleball court resurfacing improvements. So each of our, or the newer members, or each of our MSTUs are capped at $20,000. We budget, how much do we budget annually for that? 200,000, and then, but it also has a surplus, and we'll talk about that on another project, but so people can request up to $20,000 for various projects for unincorporated areas.
Barry, so one question, Madam Chair. Back to on number 20. We don't have to necessarily talk about it today. I don't know that I see Tom here anyway, but I'd just like to understand the driving force behind this change and how does it look different as far as our our folks being able to talk to the airport about issues in their community. So I just want to make sure that the change isn't making it like much more difficult for that. So I just.
So we'll make sure Tom is there on Tuesday, and he can address that directly.
Okay, that'd be fine.
I can regurgitate what he told me, but I'm not going to really be able to understand the background
That's
like he
fine.
will. So.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Item 22, this is for an MSTU for the Palm Harbor Chamber, exterior doors, deck, ADA ramps, again, $20,000. Item 23 is approving Affordable Housing Advisory Committee report. This is related to our SHIP funds, so this is our annual report. Item 24 is our annual contract with the Florida Department of Health for the Pinellas County operation. It's broke down within your packet, but $6.1 million for core services and $1.9 million for the school nurse program. Item 25, this is a substance abuse and mental health services grant to expand the substance use disorder treatment capacity. This is for our drug court, and this is a new form that we have to complete, and so that's really the main change for this. Item 26 is the adoption of a tourism development tax supplemental bond resolution for the raise. I can move this to consent if you want.
I'm going to assume there's comments. Commissioner Latvelle?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I want to talk about this item, and I don't know if you want to do that now or at the end.
I'm going to leave that to the pleasure of the commissioners. If you want to discuss it now, you can discuss it now. If you want to wait until Tuesday, you can wait until Tuesday when we
Well,
make the
no,
vote.
I mean, I don't want to wait till Tuesday.
Okay.
Because I think it's better to have some of these discussions in a more relaxed setting. So, and I mainly want to have like a family type discussion, because that's how I view each of you, even Eggers. And, you know, I don't know what y'all's conversations have been. I had one conversation since July with the one of the presidents of the Rays, and that was the day before the second meeting, which we delayed. And it was a 5-minute conversation, and where he, you know, said that he needed more money to make it work, and that's why it was a 5-minute conversation. And you know, I've been thinking about this, and you know, I think what they're doing is one of two things. I think they're either being intentionally stupid, which I don't think that they are. I think they're very intelligent people. I mean, they're bright business, you know, folks. Or I think the other thing is they're intentionally trying to sabotage their own deal. And, okay, so why are they trying to do that? I mean, if you look at what they've done the past couple months since the hurricane, and it really goes back since the hurricane, and I believe they have used those two hurricanes as a reason to try to get out of this deal. Look at what have said about, you know, a member of this commission who've supported the deal. They basically called him a liar publicly. And so, you know, one of the questions I have for us, and, you know, we don't have to basically answer this today, but, you know, they're on the record as saying we want more money. So if we approve this on Tuesday, if we approve the bonds, their previous behavior the last 15 years will be that Stu Sternberg is going to go to the media and say, if I don't get $100 million more, I'm moving this team. So when Stu Sternberg says, give me $100 million, give me $200 million, whatever, or I'm moving, what is our posture then going to be? What are we going to tell Barry when Stu Sternberg goes to the media and says, if the Pinellas County Commission doesn't give me $100 million or $200 million to fix this shortfall or this gap or whatever, I'm leaving I'm leaving Tampa Bay, I'm leaving Pinellas County, and it's on them. If they want to be a major league city, if they want to be a major league county, they need to come up with this money. So that's just something that I want us to think about, like, to think, what is their next step going to be? Because whatever we give them is not going to be enough. They're going to keep asking for more and more and more.
So I know Don's got a response to that. Don's giving me that look like, no, I'm not. And it's my understanding that in the contract, now that they have signed the contract, they can't leave. They've got a 30-year commitment. Barry, is that true? Don, is that true? So they can whine about the money all they want, but they have signed the contracts. We have all signed the contracts. So we've already obligated ourselves to the language in the contract, my understanding. And in that contract, it says that they cannot move. Is that not correct, Don?
Good morning, Commissioners. Don Kroll from the County Attorney's Office. There's a set of contracts, as you all may remember, numerous documents, the development and funding agreement, the operating agreement, there's a non-relocation agreement, there's several other agreements, but they are tied together. There are certain trigger points within the development and funding agreement that allow the Rays to leave. They have the opportunity still at this point, they could still terminate all of that agreement at this point. So they could still terminate the agreement. There are certain points in the agreement that becomes harder and has consequences. So once the county issues its bonds and sells its bonds, if they terminate or default after that, they have to pay all the costs of unwinding all those bond sales and paying all of that back. So it becomes economically more difficult for them over time, and then eventually you get to a point where they start actually building the stadium.
But what is before you is the supplemental bond resolution, okay?
Right.
And that's the final piece for us, but they still have to meet their obligations before we issue bonds. And Don can outline those, of which we have not seen any of those documents, okay, regardless of what, has been said in the media. They have obligations there, and under the terms of what you're being asked to approve, they would have to meet those before we would go to bond sale. And so that's really going to then put them on the spot to either transfer the major league money, show the construction schedule, show the construction budget, and fulfill the obligations under this agreement. But that's the structure. Those two things would have to occur. And then after that, they have a set of things that would occur before we would transfer any money into the construction trust fund agreement.
All those agreements, or that stuff that they have to show us, that deadline for that is March 31st, correct?
As the administrator mentioned, there are two sets of conditions precedent, one that are prior to the county offering the bonds for sale. Those obligations need to be met. There's an automatic termination in the contract in the event that the Rays don't meet those obligations by March 31st of 2025.
And Madam Chair, I don't want to monopolize the time, but something of this magnitude comes down to trust. And they have not given us any reason to trust them. It was brought to my attention this week by a member of the media that, because they wanted my comment, that in July of 2023, there was a Tampa Sports Authority presentation that was regarding the fiscal analysis for a Rays stadium in Ybor Harbor between Channelside and Ybor City. The Rays had pitched that site and provided fiscal analysis. And my understanding that there was even some work done at a public financing for that, July 2023. Well, 5 of us sitting here today were at the Trop in September of 2023, 2 months later. And I mean, I don't know what y'all told Barry at the time, over a year ago, but my understanding was when he was speaking to the Rays and negotiating with the Rays, part of that understanding was you're going to talk to us, you're not going to talk to other people. And, you know, the Rays are complaining now about the, you know, we had a 30-day delay right after 2 hurricanes. And, you know, they're making a big deal about that. Well, the majority of the delays that happened were on their end because they were trying to get every dollar that they could out of this deal. And they tried to do that over the past few years. And so, I mean, I want to hear really what you guys have to say about it, but, I mean, that's where, you know, my frustrations are at the moment.
Commissioner Scheer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, my first meeting, I didn't have a lot of time to really review the contracts. I've spent every day reviewing these contracts.
Commissioner, could you pull the mic closer so we can hear you better? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
I wanted to say, first of all, I do not understand why this is even on the agenda. We are on no obligation whatsoever to vote whether or not to authorize the bonds at this time. I have reviewed the contract and the contracts, and Article 3 of the contract is clear on what triggers bond commencement for the county. The Rays have 11 conditions they must fulfill. They must satisfy before we are required to vote to proceed with the bonds. These are not small conditions. One of them is that the plans for the new stadium will be at 50%. Now, I talked to my architects yesterday. 50% of a stadium that costs $1.3 billion is significant. It would cost them approximately $25 million just to get to a 3%. That's significant, and they haven't done it yet. The other condition they have is they are supposed to provide us with letters of credit or assurances that they have cash on hand to fund their portion of the development. They have not done that. It's very expensive to go out and get financing commitments for $700 million, and they have not done it. We have not been given satisfaction. We have not been shown that they can actually finance this project. And third, Stadco is supposed to provide us with evidence acceptable related to the project that it can be met with the timeframes set forth in the project schedule included in our agreement. Not only have they not provided us with that assurance, they've already told us they can't do it. In my opinion, we should not be voting on this at all until they provide us with assurances that they can meet their 11 conditions. We shouldn't vote at all. If you, I keep hearing we need to hold their feet to the fire, and the way to do it is to pass these bonds so that it's on them to either terminate or to fail. But I'm telling you that they have until March 31st to satisfy these conditions. If they do, then it's on us to approve the bonds, but not until then. So I don't like this strategy of passing the bonds, and for another reason. Bonds aren't free. They're expensive. When we authorize these bonds, they're going to go to town. It's going to cost us $6 million to raise these, to sell these bonds. If they then terminate, we are left holding a $6 million expense that we're going to have to try to get them to repay us for, and you know that's going to be a fight for years. So I don't like the idea of spending $6 million to make them prove that they're not going to do this. Finally, if they do not meet these terms, the 11 conditions, prior to March 31st, they are not in default. The agreement self-terminates. And a lot of people are worried that if the agreement terminates, that they'll end up developing the property in St. Petersburg and not building the dome. That's not the way it works, because there's a self-termination clause in the Himes agreement, which kills the Hines-Ray's deal on the 65 acres. So if they do not perform, if they do not meet their conditions by March 31st, this deal self-terminates, and so does the deal for them to purchase the land in downtown St. Petersburg. I think we should leave the pressure on them to perform. And then, when they have performed, we will do what we are supposed to do. I have read in the paper time and time again that everybody expects us to follow the terms of the contract. The terms of the contract are they do their work first, then we do ours. And I think we should remove it from the agenda myself.
Is there any clarification on that?
There's two sets of, there's several things within what the commissioner just stated, but there's the preceding to us issuing the bonds. This is an authorization to issue bonds. They must satisfy their legal obligations that are outlined within the agreement for us to be able to issue the bonds, okay? So they still have to show those things, or we would not go to bond market and sell the bonds. And then there's things that occur after that that they would have to do in order to raising the money, showing the financing, et cetera, and stuff. So there's two different sets of approvals, and they would have to meet those conditions. But there's nothing you say that's inaccurate regarding that. How that's tied in with the Hines agreement, I do not know. Maybe Don can, speak to that. But, so I'll let him speak to that.
Madam Chair, just real quick.
Yes.
That is what he says technically correct, but if we approve the bonds, the bond ordinance, it no longer is our decision as a board. It's staff's decision as to whether or not to proceed with the bonds and then to fund the bonds and then put the money into the deal. So we're out of it.
Don, I'm going to let you answer the first question, and then we'll go to the second statement.
Thank you, Commissioner. As I understand, the first question is the effect of an automatic termination as a result of the Rays not meeting their conditions preceding under the development and funding agreement on the City of St. Petersburg Rays Hines Historic Gas Plant Redevelopment Agreement. The way I read that agreement, if the development and funding agreement is automatically terminated, as Commissioner Shearer correctly points out, because the Rays have failed either terminate under their ability to terminate, or if it's pursuant to the automatic termination provision that who was talking about, there is a provision within the city's contract with Rays Hines. Again, the county's not a party to that, but it says that the Rays Hines Group will then, at that point, not be able to take down any more property under that agreement. As I understand it right now, they've not taken down or asked to take down any property under that agreement. And there's some timeframes involved that would require them to do certain things to do that. But, and the reason it's worded that way is if they had taken down any property, it doesn't terminate that agreement because any property they had taken down would still be subject to the requirements of that agreement. Is everybody tracking me on that? Okay. Well, so.
The reason I wanted him to answer this.
The Rays Hines Development Group have the ability over time, first of all, and I was not involved in negotiating any of this, so I'm playing catch up to some extent on this redevelopment agreement as well, but there are phases of development that they're going to do. The Rays Hines Group have the ability to take down property over time to meet the requirements under that. They identify and tell the city, and I'm obviously paraphrasing, hey, we want to take down these parcels to start building vertically on this portion of Phase A, because obviously.
Starting when, Don? When can they do that?
I believe, well, that's a good question. They have a deadline to take down, I think it's at least $4 million by the worth of real property by the end of 2025. I think in theory they could begin already.
So they can start the development process
Yes.
now?
Yes. And to the extent they've taken property down, that will continue to be governed by all the requirements of that, the minimum development, all of the things that they've agreed to do within that redevelopment agreement with the city. But if the development and funding agreement is terminated pursuant to the automatic termination, as Commissioner Scheer referenced, they can't take any more down as of that point.
And I don't want to get into but you're asking one side of it, which is if the Rays terminate that agreement. But if we do not pass this agreement, how does that affect the development rights under the Hines agreement with the city?
It doesn't directly. Essentially, the contract's in limbo, and we wait for other timeframes to run. So conceivably, the March 31st date could run, and if the Rays don't meet their timeframes and/or terminate otherwise, that's all the same. So,
But if they meet their conditions, then the development.
if they meet their conditions, they can continue under the redevelopment agreement. There are a second, and Commissioner Scheer referenced this as well. Assuming, after the March 31st set of conditions preceding are met, there are a second set of conditions that must be met prior to money being funded into the construction funds trust agreement. Assuming the county was to go forward with its bond sale, the money from the bond sale would go into an escrow account until that second set of conditions precedent are met, and then that money would flow into the construction funds trust agreement. It's not just county money that goes into that. There's the city bond money and the Rays financing agreements and the MLB money, the owner's equity, a letter, all those things go into that agreement. But there are a number of conditions that continue on after March 31st, assuming all those are met at that point, up until October of 2025, and there's a separate termination if those are not met at that point.
So I do have a follow-up question to what you said, and I do want to get back to the last question you had. That money, when it's in escrow, and they have their money in escrow, and the city has their money in escrow, and because they're liable if they default to pay us back, then the money from escrow pays us back? So we wouldn't have to fight them for it, or no?
They won't have money in escrow at that point. When the money all goes into the construction funds trust agreement is where the project gets funded.
But to your point, Commissioner, we still have control of the money in escrow before it goes into construction funds trust.
That's correct.
We have control of the escrow money, so that wouldn't be at jeopardy. So the initial pieces, they show us the documentations that are precedent. We issue the bonds, that money goes into our control of escrow, all right, until they meet the second set of conditions, which would then transfer it to the construction funds trust agreement. So it'd be at that point that we had to unwind.
Okay, so Commissioner Scheer mentioned it might cost $6 million to get the bonds. I don't know if that's to sell them or to get them. I think to get them, it doesn't. There's a closing. But he says we wouldn't be able to get that money back unless it went that far that it got in the construction trust fund. We would, we'd have to fight them to get the money back.
We
Is
would
that
have
right?
control over the initial escrow funding.
Well, we'd have
I'm talking
control
about
over the
the cost
principal.
above and beyond. Cost above and beyond.
We'd have control over the principal that came from the bond sale and the interest that was thrown off of that. What I believe Commissioner Scheer is referring to are the costs of issuance. So the bond counsel fees, the attorney fees, the underwriter fees, the amounts of dollars. And frankly, I don't know those exact numbers, but I can't dispute what he's saying as far as the numbers. It's a large deal, so those numbers could be large.
Right, okay.
And by contract, if we go through that sale, the Rays are required to pay all those costs. But to Commissioner Scheer's point, will they stroke us a check that day? Well, maybe, maybe not.
They will not, and we will be asking them for it for years.
So you had a final question before Don spoke.
I can't remember what it was.
Oh, the staff, that we would be taken out of it. So
Yes, once we approve the ordinance, then staff determines whether or not they've met these conditions.
correct.
That there's, not us.
Well, that's the role of staff. That's not the role of us. Our role is policy, and if we adopt the policy, then it's up to staff to manage that policy. So they have to do it based on the contract, and Don, you can further elaborate on that. And this isn't something that we don't do all the time. We do this all the time. We adopt the policy, the staff execute it. So that's not unusual. But they have legal documents and legal requirements in which they have to follow, and our very awesome legal team would be making sure all of that is followed to the letter of the law on the contract. So, Don, if you've got more to elaborate on that.
You've pretty much stated it correctly, as the way the contract was written and the way that it's presented is that the implementation of making the requirement, or checking the satisfaction of the requirements is delegated to the staff. As you state, you set the policy, you move forward. My understanding is that staff, Barry, the consultants, David Abrams, others would be involved in working through, these large deals and people who have seen these kinds of large deals specifically on the factual basis. On the law, yes, I can certainly walk through and say, these are the requirements. Have they met them? Consultant and staff, yes, that's how that would go.
Yes. And at any time, we can get an update. And if we feel that they're not, because they can report to us on April 1st, tell us whether or not they've met all those agreements, are they in good faith? And at any time, Commissioner, and Don, if I'm wrong, we can make a motion to do something different, can we not? So if they don't meet the bonds and you report to us that they don't meet all the criteria, right? Then it's brought back to us and it's put back in our hands on how we're going to handle that. So, but otherwise, if they're meeting all the bonds, there's nothing that we vote on again because staff is meeting all of those objectives. So if they aren't meeting the objectives, it comes back to us, and that's when we make a decision.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I am trying to follow the contract that Don helped put together, and he put these conditions in there to protect us. To
Correct.
make sure that we didn't spend the money before we need to, because we might not get it back. None of these conditions have been met. I don't see the reason to be voting. I don't know why it belongs on the agenda when none of these conditions have been met.
No, I got a
That's my
couple
point.
people in
I
front,
don't get
so, okay, and I don't know, Don, if you have an answer to that, or Barry, if this isn't the first step in good faith in which we're following our protocols. And I'm not sure if there was a protocol that said, but, I could understand in any business when there's been a shift, they have to make sure that there's a skin in the game before they spend many, many, many more millions, right? And if we're going to push it off, will they have confidence then in April that we're going to adhere to our contract? And I don't know if there's a protocol that this was first, then it was that, then it was that.
You get this aligned because we time the bond market. That way we can act quickly. But the way we have it is the bond closing to be the chair of the commission that actually signed that bond closing based upon staff's review and recommendation that they've met all of the conditions.
Right.
And so that's traditionally how we do that. But you have flexibility where we can time the market. That's a piece of this. We've got it. We still have to. We have the legal proceedings. We've got that done. So there's several different conditions that have to occur. But that is traditionally the way in which you go to market on something like that. You authorize it. You've set the conditions. Unless those conditions are fulfilled, we cannot go to bond market, and the chair cannot sign the closing.
Okay, I'm going to go to, I think it was Commissioner Eggers, and then Commissioner Flowers. And then Commissioner Scott.
Commissioner Latval, I appreciate the way you've kind of wrapped this conversation. It's kind of like having a good roundtable discussion about something that's a big deal. And to have some conversation, and Commissioner Scher, I really appreciate the work that you've done to kind of remind me of kind of where we were along the way. Back in June, this gets to character and trust, okay? And it goes both ways, to your point. Back in July, a commission, not this commission, but 5 of us and 2 others, voted on this deal. And they approved the deal subject to a whole bunch of things that have to get done, and also getting all the bonding in place and all the funding in place so that we can actually have money to build a stadium. And there's a process for that. And so when and again, I just, Don, where do you keep going? Just stay up here. Sorry, Don. We had this whole issue of delay is a misnomer. Small d delayed the vote in October. We didn't delay the process at all.
Not under the contract. There's not a time frame for the county to act on these.
So the
bonds.
idea, again, that the Pinellas County, under a commission, approved this deal, the fact that we have a list of things that have to get done before, and I think you said, Commissioner Scheer, that then we perform on validating the bond process if that list of things is being done. See, some people, and again, I'm working through this a little bit, some people are looking at this as a second bite at the apple on the deal, and whether we vote for this or don't vote for this. And I think, again, to the issue of trust and character, each party needs to look in the mirror and make sure that we're doing the thing that is right. And they need to be able to trust the fact that they have a process that they have to go through before we have to do any bond validation. At the same time, we kind of need to understand in this room, as we talk, is that process of bond validating, I'm not sure what the right word is, ministerial, organizational, it's just if things are met, we do this. Again, not legal, I'm talking about ethics, I'm talking about trust, I'm talking about character. And I think that's a commentary that we need to have a little bit of because, from my perspective on a whole lot of things, one is this has been voted on, and I want to make sure that we get things done so that we feel comfortable validating the bond process. And there is a list of things that need to get done. You mentioned it last time. You've illustrated it a little bit better for me this time. And they need to start doing some of that stuff. And that means expending some money on their part, even more so than they already have. And again, it's about trusting each other. And I think really what it comes down to is we have a group that, has to kind of, double down on that vote that was done back in October. I don't like the deal then. I told them the other day, I still think, I've asked 3 times for that information about how does the Los Angeles deal compare to this deal? They paid for the whole stadium out there, the teams did, in exchange for development rights. I've asked 3 times to get some sense of how that deal is so different than this deal. It's bigger. But nobody's offered up that information, and that's okay. It's proprietary, I get it. So it's a trust thing. And my feeling is to what Commissioner Scheer said is, and I'm just saying on the record, that if they accomplish these things, I do want to hold their feet to the fire. And I'd be willing to say, and I'm just talking out loud, and I'll say it again on Tuesday, and I don't really want to wait for any commentary until Tuesday, but I think my feeling is that we need to recognize that vote that we did in July, that this commission, not this commission, but the commission did, subject to the things getting done that need to get done. And the fact that there was an election and the bodies up here changed, I understand their trepidation, but they've got stuff that they got to get done. If this deal is important to them, but I think to Commissioner Latvalla's point is that this storm opened up possibilities where, and again, there's nowhere I can point to this, but stuff that happened last year while there was negotiations going on, it concerns me that they want the development deal in a stadium, where it makes the most sense from a maximizing revenue potential. So I don't know what their motivations are, but this thing that storm kind of turned it upside down. And for them to say that we delayed it costing them money is just disingenuous completely. And as I said to them when I met, that they need, we have folks that come here for a variance in their backyard. Staff says we're going to recommend approval, but you might want to be here just in case there's some questions. And soon as we rubber stamp it, it's done, they get up and walk away. This is a big deal, and nobody was here to clarify this misnomer that they were throwing out at us. And I think that's just wrong. And they, again, looking in the mirror, be trustworthy, be honest, and just fess up to what really is going on here. And at the same time, perform what they're supposed to perform. And then this commissioner is likely to recognize the work that we did in July. Again, we as a collective body. So I'm just saying there's work to be done. So thank you. That's all I had.
Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you may or may not know the answer to this, but when we have funded other projects where we've utilized bonds for those projects, have we delayed going out for those bonds to sell those bonds until after that organization completed all of the things that were on their task list?
Commissioner, to my knowledge, I'm not aware of any other deal that we've had that was structured in this way that would be comparable to this. So I'm sorry, but I can't answer that question.
Not even comparable. Just have we had any, for example, the Salvador Dali Museum, they'll be doing construction. We're not just going to hand them $17 million.
Well, I don't think we're bonding any of that.
Okay.
We
So
we do it on a reimbursement. Most of our projects are all cash, and so we do it on a reimbursement based upon their
But it's
submittal.
done on reimbursement.
Yeah.
It's not done where they do something, we do something, they do something, we do something. It's based on you're doing the work that needs to be done, which is essentially what this contract says. And then you use our money secondarily, is what I'm saying. Okay.
The grant programs you're talking about, like the Salvador Dali, that's absolutely correct. This is a little bit different. The way this was set up, because of the nature of the funding of this, it was anticipated that everything would go into that construction funds trust agreement to be used for project costs.
There was a mention about the way that some stadiums do their deals. So the article that came out just recently regarding the deal that was done in Las Vegas for their stadium. I'm just going to paraphrase because it's a long article, but it says a development agreement with Clark County will still need to be worked out, but upon its approval, construction on the 30,000-seat dome will begin in the spring. The state of Nevada and Clark County are contributing $380 million. And the A's themselves will spend at least $100 million towards the development. So there are still, and I'm just drawing this out as one of the deals that have occurred throughout the sports industry, where the county is putting up X number of dollars, the team is putting up X number of dollars, but the county's funds are not spent until the team has expended their dollar amounts. So it's just different ways that deals are constructed. They're not all the same because it just depends on the negotiations between those contracts. So I'm just sharing that. And again, that article came out December 6th of this year. So, you know, while there may be one where the team paid for the whole development of the stadium, here is one regarding the A's in Las Vegas, where it is a partnership deal. But again, very similar to how we expend our funds. I'll have more to say on Tuesday, but for me, it seems like we just keep moving the goalposts. You know, 1 minute is, I think there's a better deal. I think there's a better deal. Well, run the numbers and present that proposed better deal. There's concern about whether or not the additional 63 acres would be able to be completed if the stadium is built and if not. That 63-acre project has never been on the table before with any other of the machinations regarding the stadium. From the time that they were built back in the 70s, the stadium was built in the 70s, through the negotiations with the Baker administration, the Bill Foster administration, the Kreisman administration. This piece, well, I'm sorry, the Kreisman second administration, yes. But this piece had never been done before. So now there is this other piece that's being negotiated by the city of St. Pete. It is my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, the bond issuance that we're talking about has nothing to do with the city and their negotiation contract when it comes to development for a hotel, the museum, a conference center, office space, and 600 affordable units on-site, 600 affordable units off-site. So when we're talking about what we're doing It should be only geared at the stadium, not at that additional piece. The other thing that I'm sure we can talk about a little later on is, and I've said this to the Rays and I've said this to Barry, whether the storm happened or not, there were still things that the Rays need to accomplish that fell within whatever their financial realm was before the storm. There are dollars that you have to expend prior to the construction and/or development of any project. It's upfront costs. Everybody pays those, no matter what it is. If I'm buying a house, I'm expected to pay a certain percentage down upfront on that before I can go to the table and sign my deal where the bank is then guaranteeing a loan for the balance of the funds. So whether the Milton and Helene came or not, the Rays still would have those costs. So I'll say more as it relates to what's going on here, but I really don't think, and I'm sorry, just one last piece, I don't think that if we were to pass the bond issue, I don't think that staff or Barry would do anything that would be inappropriate, not legal, not within the confines of the contract. It does switch over to staff, but that's what we pay staff for. Once we have approved anything, whether it's roadways or when we're approving affordable housing projects or whatever, once we vote on that here, then it is up to staff and utilizing their expertise to assure that those things are being done. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't stay nosy, and get into it or stay into it, and that community people may not reach out to us and say something. We ride by and we may see something, so we bring it back and say, hey, this is going on. I got this phone call. What's happening? We need you to kind of follow up or whatever. So that's not to say that that won't happen, but that is the way that government business operates. Once we vote and once it's passed, then we are depending on the expertise. And I don't think, at least since I've been here, that staff has done or would do anything that would be contrary to what our desires are and what our vote represents. So that's the faith I have in you guys. And if you did, I'd pick up the phone and call. Anybody in the county knows I pick up the phone and call. And I don't always go through Barry. I'll call the department myself and share how I feel. So, we'll have more conversation on this on Tuesday, I'm sure, but I just kind of feel like every time we come together, the goalpost is being moved each and every time. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I don't really see what we have to lose by passing the bond resolution, because the bonds don't get issued until the Rays meet all their requirements. All we're doing is providing certainty. Business needs certainty to function properly. And I'm not defending the Rays by any means. Their ownership group continues to move lower in my esteem day by day by some of the things they do in the statements that they make. But the way to put the pressure on them is to pass it and let them walk away. I mean, we have very graciously and generously offered to help build them a new home. They don't want our help, that's fine. We'll find something else to do with the money. No big deal, right? Let them be the ones to walk away. And there is a check and a balance here, because what this resolution does is allows the chairman to sign the authorization. I'm not going to sign anything until Don looks me in the eye and says, I am 150% certain that everything is good, okay? And the likelihood of them walking away after that, after they've got, I think MLB has, what, $100 million hard money? When they got hard money in the bank, the chances of them walking away are extremely, extremely slim. Nothing in life is risk-free. I think we have to keep that in mind as well. I mean, the Rays are taking a risk, Heinz taking a risk, the city's taking a risk, we're taking a risk. Nothing in life is risk-free. It just doesn't work that way. And And furthermore, you know, in order for, my understanding anyways, is order for the Rays to even have conversations with other regions or other municipalities, is they've got to have permission from the rest of the MLB owners. They don't have it. They don't have it. I mean, how many hours-long meetings are we going to have about this same subject? I'm telling you what, I don't want to, you know, in 2025, we got a lot of stuff to do. We got recovery. We got a lot of stuff to focus on in 2025. I don't want this to be something that's hanging over our neck and weighing down every stinking meeting that we have. We need to get this thing off of our plate, and we need to move on. The Rays failed to meet their obligations by March 31st. It's on them. We got nothing to lose here. So my opinion is we just need to follow through. We need to get this done, and we need to move on with life and let them do whatever they're going to do. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Latville.
I just have a couple questions. You had mentioned in one of your comments about voting after the March 31st, and that would give us a time, or that then we could decide what to do. My understanding is if they do not perform by March 31st, it would self-terminate. Is that correct?
If the Rays have not met the conditions by March 31st, the agreement automatically terminates. Yes, that's correct.
So at that point, would we need to take an official action, or would that be the action?
That would be the action.
The date passing without them satisfying those conditions.
If they don't meet the things, we won't go to bond market. So if you pass this and in January, February, they haven't met those conditions, we will not go to market.
So, you know, there's a difference between saying stuff in the media and like doing things at government meetings, sending letters to government officials, et cetera. You know, at the city council meeting, the Rays asked them during the meeting, do not repair the trop, which caused the city council to then reverse the decision that they had previously made at the same meeting. They've sent us a letter claiming that they've already spent $50 million. Also they are blaming us for shortfalls. Is there any evidence whatsoever that they have spent $50 million so far?
Not that we have seen.
Not that we've seen.
Okay. The A's stadium in Las Vegas was mentioned. Just last week, the New York Times wrote an article and said that there is now, estimates have come in, and the stadium is now going to be $250 million higher than what is estimated, which I find a great coincidence that the Rays want $200 million from us in addition to this deal, and they are blaming it on a 30-day delay, which I don't believe 30 days or 60 days equate to $200 million that they're going to be asking for. So I will leave you with that.
Commissioner Nowicki.
Thank you, Chair. Is there any way, Don, that if we, issue the bonds, give them the money, they can terminate the agreement anyway, and our money's held up in escrow? Are there multiple names on the escrow account that would have to agree to release the money back to the parties, like a traditional escrow?
Once the money goes into the construction funds trust agreement, if something were to happen, there are provisions that allow for the parties to take their money back out of the individual accounts within the trust. But that's the whole thing has to fall apart and be terminated for that to occur.
Okay. And you may not know this, but it was my understanding when I was on a call with Administrator Gertis and Barry last week that to Commissioner Scott's point, the Rays can't talk to any other municipality under the current use agreement with the city of St. Pete through the end of 2028, in addition to Major League Baseball. So everyone keeps saying the Rays are going to leave, the Rays are going to leave. Well, they literally can't even talk to anybody about leaving until the end of 2028 at the earliest. Bond issuance has been talking about. David Abrams' name was mentioned as well, that he would be making recommendations for issuing the bonds after we vote on it. Well, it's my understanding that he has a paid incentive for us to issue the bonds. So, I mean, I find that a little concerning that we'd be taking recommendation from somebody once we've already voted that they have a paid incentive for us to give the bonds out. But I guess Legal Eagles would make sure there's no improprieties there. I've already heard that the city of St. Pete is looking to pony up $25 million a year for the next 4 years to help cover the Rays gap. I've heard that in the rumors and the wings. I know the Rays are going to be asking for more money in addition from the city. I think the city of St. Pete will most likely move forward with fixing the roof at Tropicana Field. They talked about that yesterday a little bit. The A's example has been brought up. I mean, they got $380 million from the state of Nevada, Clark County, and the city of Las Vegas, and their owner said, we're only going to use $350 million of the $380 million provided. And they're putting up $100 million before the bonds are released, where the Rays only have to put up $50 million. And the A's are responsible for all cost overruns, all insurance, and everything like that, in addition to their $100 million. And they've even said, because their stadium is costing $500 million more, they wrote a letter to everybody that's involved saying, hey, we're good for it. The Bank of London has already seen their financials for the A's and said, hey, they got the money, they're good for it. And we haven't seen any of that. So there's a lot of talk of, trust and everything that's going on between all parties. Well, how come we got one baseball team owner that's giving the state of Nevada, Clark County, and the city of Las Vegas their financials before they even vote on the bond, but yet we can't see the Rays financials to see if they have the money before we do that. So I think if we're going to compare, the A's, they're building an enclosed stadium. They're building an enclosed stadium here. They're building a stadium that has 30,000 seats. We're building one that has 27,000. So we talk about economy of scale, sales tax, bed tax, all those things. We're still getting the short end of the stick, and we're putting up between the city and the county over $600 million cash. I know the team has already been talking to people like Kathy Wood about buying Stu's equity in the team, $600 million. So I know they're actively shopping to sell their portion of the team. They've already said they've stopped work on it in the letter that they sent, so I have zero confidence that they've met the requirements for us to issue the bonds. The new minimum development projections that Barry sent out are less than our initial investment, and I know that was a big reason for this board moving forward. Everyone said that, oh, if the minimum development economic projections are hit, we'd still get our money back. Well, now we're still not getting our money back with the new minimum economic development projections for the county's end. I mean, there's just a lot of problems here. And another, Commissioner Egger said, this isn't another bite at the apple, but I think if we look at everything, the Rays can't talk to anybody else to the end of 2028 with the city's current agreement. Every year the city's late at replacing their roof and extends that out. It automatically extends the city's. And so I think if we do delay this or vote no, that would force the Rays back to the table, and we do get another bite at the apple because they literally can't talk to anybody else. And at the end of the day, in a closing, the buyers have all the leverage. And as Commissioner Scott pointed out, we're graciously giving them the opportunity to have a home. We're buying a team. We're buying a home for the Rays for the next 30 years. And the only thing we're getting in return is economic development projections while we increase the value of their franchise hundreds of millions of dollars. And what do we have to lose? We have millions of dollars of lose if we go through with the cost of issuing these bonds. That's what we have to lose. And then we have to go to our constituents and say, hey, you guys did everything you did, and now we're out $6 million, $10 million, whatever it is. Good luck getting that back from the Rays. I think the Rays are taking very little risk here. I would love for them to have been at our last meeting to answer questions. I don't know why we're getting the redhead stepchild treatment. At least they show up to the city of St. Pete. Nothing against anybody that has redhead or is a stepchild, but why aren't they showing up and answering questions to us, but yet they go to the city of St. Pete and answer their questions? Are we not worthy of Brian or the Matt Silverman or the Ray's time? I mean, where's Stu? Right? I mean, in a $1 billion deal, even if I'm buying a house for $300,000, I show up to the people that I'm doing the deal with. So I just think it's really been bad faith on their part. And I mean, I agree with Commissioner Scheer. Maybe it shouldn't be on the agenda for Tuesday. So I yield back, Chair. Thank you.
Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be quick here. There was just one point that I wanted to bring up is, I think it was Commissioner Latvala mentioned, well, what are they going to do if they made it clear that they want more money? I think the city of St. Pete's been pretty clear that they're not coming up with any more money, and I will just say publicly on the record right now that this commissioner will not vote for another dime of money for the raise. The deal we have on the table has been negotiated long and hard. We're not going to go back and try to renegotiate things, and if you do that, there's no guarantee you're going to get a better deal. All right? You open it up, and guess what? Then they really are going to want more money. And then where do we go with it? So it's, you know, what we've offered is what we've offered, and that's what I'm sticking to, not another dime. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, any other comments, questions? I do want to make one clarification. Any of the money that the county is spending is not costing a taxpayer any money. This is all tourist development money that comes from bed tax. So we won't be going back and apologizing to the constituents saying, oh, we blew your money, because this is bed tax, not general fund. It's not property tax. It's not general revenue. So I just want to clarify this is strictly bed tax. So does everybody understand that? Clearly no, because I get many emails saying, please don't spend a penny of my tax dollars. But I just wanted to clarify that. If there's no other questions, comments?
Just one thing.
Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, I would just say, if we can, it would be nice, as we, again, are trying to develop, I'll just say, a new trust, because I don't know what happened back in October, that they give us a summary of the things that we've not seen any evidence that they've done anything. Is there anything that they can possibly raise, if you're listening, just deliver to us that this is the 10 things that we're supposed to be doing before we issue the bonds. We are at 50% on this. We are at, just to give us a sense of, again, what actually has been done. Because I think, you know, prices go up, they just go up. You know, storms come, they get nervous. I think they want to shift responsibilities because of what happened. And I think that's part of it, you know, and I don't know what happened last year in talking about good faith when there was efforts going on with the city of Tampa, or Hillsborough County, excuse me, or the Tampa Sports Authority, I'll get to the right group, that had conversations going on about something else. So I just would like to see maybe they could let us know how they're doing on their list.
We can put something in
And they
writing to
don't,
them.
you know, we can ask the question and come back and have that conversation on Tuesday. Thank you.
Commissioner Latvala?
Thank you, and that brought up something that I want to add to the list. If they, and they don't have to show us item by item receipts, but if they can show us evidence that they've spent $50 million on this project, I think that would be good as well.
We'll put something in writing today.
And just to clarify a couple of things. One, there are two sets of conditions preceding. As I said, the one for the offering for sale, they have to have spent $10 million. Before it goes into the construction funds trust agreement, that's when they have to have spent the $50 million. And similarly with the $100 million for the MLB, that's a commitment from MLB that when it goes hard is to go into the construction funds trust.
And we have seen that.
We've seen the letter commitment.
We have seen the
from
letter of
MLB.
commitment from MLB.
And the reason why I said $50 million is because they sent us a letter saying that they have spent $50 million. And I just want to see
We can ask them to
evidence.
show the evidence of the items that are precedent, or that are preceding to the issuance of our bonds.
So we can send a letter, but just like we have stated, we don't have to pass these bonds until. They don't have to show us this until, so we certainly can send a letter, but my expectations are pretty low about getting anything. And I think Commissioner Eggers was spot on how I feel about character and trust. And You know, we don't have control over what this city's deal. Everybody keeps focusing on the city. We have no control over that. Absolutely no control over that. But it is character and trust, and we signed a contract, and in good faith, you know, I just feel that we need to follow through on our commitments and show our good character. I'm not saying we have to trust them, but right now, they don't trust us either because we've made delays on what were some expectations. So I really think it's about character, and we follow through, and go ahead.
Yeah, with all due respect, Madam Chair, and I have, and you're a dear friend, but two of us that voted against this,
Right.
we're not obligated to support this because other people did. And so, you know, my question would be, what has changed since July or October to make either one of us, either myself or Commissioner Eggers, that opposed this deal in July, now have a change of heart? And we're not obligated because other people that are no longer here voted for this. And like, that doesn't have anything to do with his or my character. And I mean, just because other people voted for this, and both he and I said in July, part of the reasons why we voted against this was the very land development deal that we've been talking about today.
Correct. But we have no control over the negotiations of the land development, never did. And if we default, you know, that doesn't affect that land development. If we default, it doesn't affect the land development. That's with the city. So, you know, we've just never had control over that, ever. But what I can say to that is when I voted against the mask mandate, you know, we still had an obligation once we passed that we had to go through and do it. When we vote on any policy, the staff have an obligation to execute. Whether everybody is unanimous or not, the staff has an obligation to execute it. Sure. And there's no difference on all the things I voted against, whether it was shutting down business, I voted against it. Staff, because it was the majority voted to shut down businesses, the staff had to execute that. So it doesn't matter what we're voting on. I didn't vote to raise taxes, but the majority did. Staff executed raising taxes. This is no different. The majority voted to go through with this whole deal, and staff should be executing it. So it's, you know, you didn't vote for it, just like I didn't vote for all that other stuff, but that doesn't mean that because the main body and the majority of the votes voted for something, just like every other ordinance that we pass, we execute it, because the majority, not the individuals, but the majority voted to pass that ordinance, whether we all agree or not. That's what we do. And it's what we do every single time we meet and vote. We pass an ordinance, and then the staff executes it based on the language that's in that ordinance. And so I don't know how this is any different than any example I've given you.
But the county hasn't done anything to violate the deal.
We haven't.
If we did something to violate the deal, that would be different. We haven't done anything to not keep our end of the bargain.
That's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
So I don't know where the whole, never mind.
Go ahead, Commissioner Eggers.
Well, you know, again, everybody does their own thought process, and I respect every single one around this table that they're going to do their own thought process. And to the point about, and I'm so glad that Commissioner Scheer started the conversation with that, because they have responsibilities to perform. We don't. So I don't know. I mean, again, I just think we have to be careful. This isn't, again, getting into this, they said, we said, and pointing fingers. Stop. They are big boys, and they understand that they have to perform. The storm did something to them, either caused pause, caused an opportunity across the bay, something changed, and they decided they wanted to blame us for it. That's their issue, their problem, and they need to kind of come to grips with that. What I'm saying is, and again, each of us will do it differently. The commission voted in July for something and representing this county. And I'm saying that, there are some that think, and again, to what you said, Commissioner Nowinski, there may be another thing down the road that could potentially provide another bite at the apple if everything failed. And then we could renegotiate a new bite at the apple. But short of that, this process that we're going through is not another bite at the apple. The process we're going through is they have responsibilities to do some things, and then we have some responsibilities to do some things. And they're concerned a little bit. Again, I'm not sure what's motivating them, but they're also using that as saying that they're concerned that we're not going to deliver. And again, I will speak more definitively on Tuesday, and I'll try to address that issue, but they need to start doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's all. And if they are, and that's what we're going to try to find out a little bit about, are they doing the things that they're supposed to be doing, or have they kind of found that maybe there's a little cost overrun going on, or maybe there's another opportunity that looks brighter, or is a potential owner out there that said, if you can get Tampa, we'll pay more for the ownership. I don't know what's going on, and all I'm saying is that they have a responsibility to perform, and are they doing that? Can they show us that they're actually performing? I'm talking about the part about issuing the bonds at the end of the day, and because they can't start March 1 performing that list and getting it done by March 31st. So there's a track that they should be on right now that provides that opportunity for us to go out to the bond market, get it and bring it back to the fund. So, I mean, it's really on them kind of to be moving this deal along, and maybe they can show us that that's what they're doing.
Yeah,
Instead of just saying that.
the legislative vote of the board on this supplemental bond resolution is just one of those conditions preceding, and the lion's share of those conditions are the raise to perform. You're right.
Yeah, and so that's all. If they're doing that, then maybe that's a different story around the table. I don't know that. I'm just saying. It'd be nice to have some indication. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Scheer.
Just one more thing I just want to reiterate, and it has to do with the raise and the conditions that they must satisfy before we proceed. They've already written us a letter that they can't satisfy that condition, and they're not going to. They've already told us they're not going to satisfy this condition, that it will be built on time and on budget and on schedule. They've already told us that. And so I'm thinking to myself, until they either tell us that they can or they satisfy it, why are we even voting? I don't understand why it's even on the agenda. That's all I really had to. That's good.
Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for the second part of the vote that we took on that day was for the in-town redevelopment CRA. And those dollars is what the city of St. Pete was utilizing as their payment portion towards the stadium. Is that accurate? Because it was two votes that
County
day.
dollars.
Yeah, there's two
pieces of it.
There's two pieces to that. I think you're referring to the extension of the CRA for the city-only
Right.
portion.
Correct. That's what I'm talking about. And so I may have asked this question, you may have responded, and if you did and I have forgotten, I apologize to you in advance. So if for any reason that the city does not provide its portion in bond financing for the stadium, we've already approved the city for that CRA piece, the in-town redevelopment.
So
Will they still have access? You see what I'm going?
have access to
Will they
those
still
funds?
have
I'd have
access
to
to
look at the
those
language.
funds? Because the approval for that in-town redevelopment CRA funding was for the utilization of those towards the stadium. If that should not occur, then does that unwind those CRA dollars and they're contributed back to the county? Or can the city utilize those dollars? And if they so choose, would need to look at another way of coming up with the $312 million that we would have contributed towards the stadium. Just asking.
Yeah, well, off the top of my head, what I would say to you is that there's a lot within the CRA that are eligible expenditures. This is but one of them. Infrastructure for the remainder of the CRA in-town development is allowable. It was allowable before we voted, before the county voted in July. There was some minor tweak that allowed some additional to go towards stadium costs. So if the stadium doesn't go forward, they can't spend it on stadium costs. So that's my off the top of my head reaction, but we can certainly look at that in more depth.
You're referring to the extension. You're referring to the extension of 2032 to
Correct.
2042, which is the piece that we approved back in
Correct.
the July. Let us look at that and the way in which that's structured.
Because if there are component pieces or dollars that were targeted specifically for that, and that's not what they're using it for, then what within the in-town redevelopment that says either they can just kind of change course, or do they need to come back to us for us to approve? Because now that changes the utilization of those funds.
Yeah,
So
let-
that's
let-
the main
let us look at
question.
that. Yeah, let
That's
us
the
look
main
at that.
question.
Commissioner, what you all took action, and the administrator already referenced it, the extension that you did for the increment funds is city only.
Correct.
And it allows them to levy anywhere between 50 to 60% of the increment to continue using those funds. Your agreement with the city, and we've had an agreement with the city of St. Petersburg in place regarding the allocation of the TIF funds since, I believe, 2005. There's a chart at the end that many of you are probably very familiar with that's very specific as to the uses of funds. I can't recall off the top of my head. We can certainly pull the agreement. But the funds are tied to the specific uses in the table, so the city would still have to spend the money
On those things.
in the amounts and on the projects that are set forth in that agreement. You know, there is an allocation for baseball that would not be able to be spent for the stadium, and that's a defined project now within the plan that is approved by the city and the county. It would have to be reallocated by an amendment to the agreement.
That's my question, and that's what I would like clarification on, so thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Eggers.
I'm going to wait till Tuesday for any further comments. And I'm hoping that the Rays will provide us with some information of good faith about where they are. That's my last comment. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Commissioner Nowicki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So can we as a board decide that, hey, we want to invite the Rays to come answer questions, that we want the architects that have to meet these drawing requirements before we issue the bonds, the builder who said they can't clearly build on time and on budget, which are all these, my understanding, conditions of the bonds. Can we invite them to come and talk on Tuesday?
I think by your comments, I'm sure they're listening.
Well, I'm saying, can we formally?
Sure, we're gonna put that in writing and we'll make that offer.
And if they don't come, can we automatically just pull this off the agenda and move it to another meeting?
The board can do whatever the board.
No, you can vote for it.
I beg your pardon.
It is on the agenda, so what the board does
Yeah.
with it is your
You have to vote for
option.
You can either defer it or vote.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's it. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So I'm taking it that I'll keep it on the regular agenda.
Any other items on this, any other comments on this agenda item? Okay, we will move on.
All
Number
right.
27?
Item 27 is an amendment number 1 to a grant agreement with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. This is for Vulnerability Assessment Phase 2. This is specifically in keeping requirements of Florida Statute 3-80-093 to develop an adaptation plan. Again, this is Phase 2, and it's meeting a legal obligation with the state. Item number 28 is a construction agreement with CSX Railroad. This is for the 35th Street North Railroad Crossing. Item number 29 is for North Railroad, 46th Avenue North Railroad Crossing. Item 30, this is pretty exciting. This is to approve a downtown Palm Harbor streetlight district and authorizing the creation and collection method for that. What this provides out of your MSTU funds and the reserves is $400,000 of one-time funding to get this up and running. And then the downtown Palm Harbor district will be paying for the maintenance and the ongoing maintenance and operation of that light district. So kind of a big project for our own, for our own real downtown in the unincorporated area. They've worked a lot on this. Item 31, certificate of renewals for life support providers. They're listed within your packet. There's a number of them. Item 32 is issuance of multifamily housing revenue bonds. This is for the Indigo Apartments, $24 million. There's no fiscal impact or risk to the county. Item 33 is the same for Oakhurst Terrace Apartments. Again, this is multifamily bonds. There's a number of funding sources. All these have, as you'll see, especially for the new commissioners, there's a number of funding sources. These are, revenue bonds that through the Housing Finance Authority. It's no obligation on us. However, on all these, we have a piece of our housing fund, Penny for Pinellas funds. This one happens to be 4% low-income housing tax credits that they apply from the state from, along with a variety of funding sources. Item 34 is our agreement with United Healthcare. This is for our stop loss, for our Essex loss insurance coverage. Next is County Attorney.
Under 35, this is something that you do every couple of years when new public officials are elected. You will be approving the public official bonds for the 4 county commissioners whose terms commenced last month. You'll see a similar item after the beginning of the year for the constitutional officers. But again, this is just a routine action that occurs every time we have new officers elected into office. For 36, I have been asked to maybe go over casually some of the charter amendments that were passed. I had looked at doing that at the last meeting. Of course, we ran quite long at the last meeting. I anticipate we could potentially run quite long again on Tuesday. So I will use my judgment and talk a little bit about those at the appropriate time, perhaps in January.
Commissioner Scheer?
Yeah, I had a question. Are you saying I'm not bonded yet?
Your bond is in place. It's just it's a follow-up ministerial function for the board to formally approve them. We'll have the chair sign them, and then the originals are filed away in the public record, and it completes the process. But no, you are bonded. Your bond is in place.
Okay.
All 4 of the commissioners that were just elected have bonds currently in place. Well, and we were very specific because on some of the bonds, they didn't have like the correct date in them, so we made sure that we got all the correct dates in. Everybody is taken care of.
And you have no, yes, that's your report then? You will play that by ear? Okay.
Item 37 is County Administrator's Report. I will have a County Administrator's Report, and specifically, I really want our staff to talk about where we're at with the both debris collection and also with our substantial damage process and where we're at. So I'll have both Kevin and probably Jill or Kelly up, on that. And I guess, Madam Chair, I defer to you on whether we do it here or you want to bring it up to the beginning of the meeting. It's kind of up to you.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. All right. So I will have those items ready. Item 38, appointments to the Medical Services Advisory Council. They've asked that this be moved to January, that we pull this item because they have a meeting later this month. They have to vote on these.
Hey, Barry, could you have that flow chart up that Kevin's put together, his group's put together for the substantially damaged process that they go
Yes.
through? I think it'd be great just for residents to, I know they can go see it somewhere, but if we could show it to them and then tell them where it's at. It has the 2 approaches, if you're substantially damaged or you're not, and then you go through a different, so it's already done. It's just a matter of showing it here.
Yeah, no, you're going to have a little PowerPoint or something. I don't know what you're planning on, Kevin. I guess
Kevin's
so. I guess
excited
so now
about that,
after I said
I
that. but certainly to have that flow chart, I think you're right. I think it's a great visual of the process where we're at, and we'll have that available on Tuesday, and we'll certainly at least put up the chart.
And we'll talk about debris for private road, some of the secondary roads that haven't been hit the first time yet for debris pickup.
Well, there's a lot that goes into that, and we'll talk about that because
fine.
there's a lot of issues. So let's go through it once. But
That's fine. Just wanna make sure
sometimes
we're-
we are picking up, and people continue to put stuff out. Every case is different.
Okay.
But I think the one message that we're going to make crystal clear is we know every single one of the roads. Our supervisors are monitoring and managing the contractors, and we will make sure we get there.
So am I monitoring.
Oh,
So-
I know, I have email and text and calls and, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 39 is Feather Sound Community Services. This is 5 appointments to the Community Services District. 40 is Historic Preservation Board. 41 is Lellman Community Development, Redevelopment Area Advisory Committee. 42 is Historical Commission by Commissioner Lavella and a reappointment by Commissioner Flowers. 43 is Suncoast Health Council. 34 is Unified Personnel Board. Your current member is Kronsnagel, and I think there's others that have applied. 45 is Youth Advisory Committee. Youth Advisory Committee nominee to the Parks Board. Item 46, I'd like to just spend a couple seconds on this, and I know we're running long. This will be on Tuesday, but since we have folks here, this is our state legislative program. I know they went around and met with each commissioner, and you've provided a lot of feedback. I'd asked Laura to come up, and Mike to come up, and who else is coming up? There we go. All right. To kind of outline that process, there's still more work to be done on this, and I think the comments that you provided individually and this collectively were really good about having a very robust program, specifically around things that were impacted us from the storm and being aggressive in that. We always anticipated that there's going to be bills out there, and part of your guiding principles is to be able to go after money. So we don't, that's anytime we have an opportunity, we add that and we go after that. But making that more clear in the program. And so staff's going to kind of outline some of those opportunities and things that we're thinking. But I appreciate the feedback. We've kind of retooled that based upon your thoughts, and I'll let them cover that and start with Laura.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Laura Beamer and Mike Moore from the Southern Group. Thank you for allowing us to present this morning. Just wanted to give you a brief update on where we are in the session and kind of what the budget is looking like. The House and Senate were up 2 weeks this month for trainings and briefings. Right after the holiday, we go right into committee weeks in January, February, and session starts in March. The House forms are already out. There is a new box on the form to check this year that states that your project is storm-related. And as you know, we've talked about this in the past, and it's been reiterated to us over and over again. Projects that are storm-related will have way more weight in the state budget than obviously projects that are not. We need to focus on wants, not needs. Needs, not wants, excuse me. But what I will caution you is, House and Senate leadership have told Mike and I, they've told their members that they really want to rein in spending this year. While there is a $2.1 billion surplus in the fiscal year 25-26, the revenue projections have them at almost a $7 billion deficit if they don't rein in spending and they keep spending at the current growth. However, storm recovery is very important. So we have been told there will be a storm recovery policy bill as well as a storm recovery supplemental appropriation package, so to speak. So that is one of the reasons that we've gone back. We've looked at, what was our impacts during the storm and what are the projects we should be asking for this session, and that's what Matt is going to address with you next.
Thank you, Laura. Matt Spohr, Director of Strategic Initiatives and Legislative Affairs. Laura's correct. You have a priority, which is disaster recovery bill, and it's listed, let me put my glasses on. It's listed as recovery efforts including hurricane housing replacement program, revolving loan fund, lost revenue, which is a big one, which we're still calculating now, FEMA cost share, and emergency shelter hardening and enhancements. We also have a list of 7 different projects that total $85 million that are either a result of storm impacts from 2024 or to better prepare the county for future storm events. And I can give you more details at a later date, but there's flood improvements regarding undersized box culverts. There's traffic control mitigation, elevation of the traffic control boxes along Gulf Boulevard to prevent equipment damage and storm induation during storm events. There is campus flood protection at Public Works, because we had some flooding issues at Public Works. There's, that's Public Works side, I should have said that. Utilities, there's 31 pump station control panels that we'd like to elevate at $1.5 million. There's a booster station on Gulf Beach that needs to be replaced. There's a pump station generator improvements throughout our facilities. And then there's also a utilities Cat 5 building that's unfunded. Some of these projects we will be able to go after either FEMA money for or resiliency grant funding for. So it's a combination of 3 different buckets. It's a combination of appropriations, it's a combination of FEMA or the resiliency grants. And so our goal over the next month is to really hone these in to see what type of support we can get for these different types of projects. But outside of what's listed in your backup material, there are 7 different projects totaling $85 million. Now, I'm not going to tell you that we're going to be successful getting $85 million for those 7 projects, but we do have those on our list.
And Commissioners, there's still a lot of work to do. We'll bring that back to you at the January meeting. So we specifically talk about what, we see kind of going into that as we kind of refine those projects down.
Commissioner Eggers.
I appreciate the work that you all have done getting us ready. And I just wanted to give a shout out to the group because I have a neighborhood in North County that is having some issues with a state-run, state-overseen facility that that is causing a lot of consternation. And I was able, because of Laura, basically, to make a contact for me so that I have had conversation with the highest level, and they're already investigating the organization that there's some concerns about from the neighborhood. And I'm not sure that falls under their purview all the time, but I really appreciate that effort. And we'll see what happens, because there's a lot of education and information that needs to be sought out. And but the neighborhood is a little bit more at peace knowing that the organization is being looked at. So I really appreciate that. And so does the neighborhood. That's all right now.
Any other questions for our team up here, legislative? Matt, do you want to give an update on the vote that passed yesterday in federal Congress?
The WRDA?
Yeah.
So it's passed one side of Congress. There's still a vote, I believe, next week. And during your meeting and discussion this morning, we received some information on advocacy that we probably need to do between now and that vote to try to get some more language in there. I can tell you that I wish Kelly was here because she's the guru expert, but it doesn't go as far as we'd like it to go.
Does it still have the 50-year?
Yes, it still has easement requirements in there. It doesn't go as far as we'd like it to go, and to my knowledge, it doesn't get us to where we need to be. So there will be some information coming out probably today about what we'd like to see additionally to get us to where we need to be.
Okay, and what about the disaster package?
I have no update from Harry on the disaster package. We're monitoring that though, and as soon as, if there's funding available, then we will be able to explain more in detail what programs that means will be turned on.
Okay, so I did call Army Corps again yesterday and asked them if staff calls them to make sure that they approve the language that we're asking for. And then I also talked to them about Jacksonville. Jacksonville hasn't been giving our damage report numbers. And if they don't give us our damage report numbers, then we can't get it in the disaster plan to get the money to pay for those things. So I've asked them to look into that for us. I know Kelly got a correspondence yesterday from Jacksonville. I don't know if that was a result of my phone call or not. But it seems that they're aware. The ASA pinged him. It was traveling, so he couldn't return my call personally, but I've been working through his executive assistant, and so we're still working. We're still working it really hard, and we're really hoping we can get this through this month, at least in the disaster plan, and continue working with WRDA, so. Okay?
And Chair Wes Brooks is the one who reached out to us this morning, so.
Okay.
He's with the governor's office. He's been working hard with us on this.
Oh, wonderfully. He's great. Okay.
Okay, great. On item 47, you do have to pass the joint resolution so we can hold the joint meeting with Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Pasco counties here in January. Moving on to the public hearings, the first item is, this is what's continued from November, map amendment to residential medium to multimodal corridor. Property is currently vacant, and they're looking for a different designation. Item 49, City of Tarpon Springs. Again, this one also was continued from November 19th, retail services and preservation to preservation and open space. The property breakdown and the request is broken down within your packet. Item 50, these are amendments to the zoning code, the first of 2 public hearings. I think Kevin and or Tom could, speak to any questions you have. This is making it easier for us. This is to improve our zoning process, be able to speed things up, and help our development process. And then the next item, this is, again, adds additional flexibilities, removes redundancies, and again, designed to change up our process. But specifically, this adds additional flexibility to our criteria. And what it does is it excludes stormwater or storm repairs from our substantial improvement process. In other words, you shouldn't be, if you redid your kitchen last year and now you've got storm and you've got a look back period of a year, we shouldn't charge you twice to be able to meet the threshold of substantial improvement. So it removes the storm damage from that calculation. And so we're requesting that change also. Item 52 is aligning a lot of different appropriations around American Rescue Plan funds. And again, the breakdown is within your packet. And item 53 will be needed if the previous item on the raise is approved.
Okay. Anyone have any else they want to? Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been working the last 2 weeks on board appointments for next year, and about done with that. It's a little more challenging than I thought, just trying to balance everything and try to, balance people's asks with, expertise in certain areas and continuity, with boards and committees. But I am struggling with one appointment, which is an alternate for the canvassing board. And I will be the primary, but we need somebody as an alternate that is not endorsing in the March elections. So is there anybody here that will be available to be an alternate? That doesn't prevent you from contributing to a candidate, but you can't endorse, you can't go to any fundraising events, you can't be on a host committee, that sort of thing. So is there anybody here that meets that role? If not, I believe we have, do we have an option for a citizen appointment? Okay. So if nobody's going to meet that, then we'll look for a citizen appointment. But before I went that route, I just wanted to, is there anybody qualified to be an alternate for the canvassing board?
And the board is required by law to have an alternate, is why the commissioner is referencing a potential citizen appointment. We are required by law to have a regular and alternate candidate for the canvassing board.
Okay, all right.
I haven't endorsed anyone or anything, so if we need an alternate, I'd be happy to serve in that capacity, be flexible for the board.
Okay, so, all right, I appreciate that. Okay, all right, thanks.
Anyone else have anything else to add? No? I do have a couple of things. I did ask Barry to look at additional hurricane relief potential assistance. St. Petersburg is doing it. I know they got money from the foundation and they're using CBDG funds to do that. But I have asked him to look and see how our program's going, if there's other revenue, and if we can maybe increase if people have to fix a roof or do something else. So I know he's going to get back to me on that.
We're actually going to cover that on Tuesday as part of our report.
Oh, okay, great. I like it when you make things happen fast. We'll be bringing forward the Commissioner's Handbook for adoption under new business at the next meeting. Remember, this is a living, breathing document, but traditionally we vote to approve. Ashley can send you the electronic version if you don't already have it. I know many of us have been through this many times. For our new commissioners, you're welcome to bring issues up for discussion now or leave them for new business at the next meeting, which I think you've already figured out, but I just wanted to say that. And does anyone, and then the events. So if you have anything else, nobody else has anything for the Commissioner Flowers?
For the handbook, I made a comment based on what was said to me by the clerk, Kim Burke.
Okay.
Did he ever respond? Because I know the question was
That would
being
be
asked
Ashley.
of him. The question was being asked of him based on what his response was to me. Did he ever respond? Okay. Okay. I just wanted clarification on that, just to make sure we're doing things right.
Okay, you heard that, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, anybody else have anything to add? No? Okay, seeing that, meeting is adjourned.